So it's time for another one of my, hey, these things go together, and that makes them a series recommendation. Today the theme is colonialism, and while there are tons of books that I can recommend in the fiction genre, I am just going to do something that's nonfiction. So something you might not know about me is that in college I had an undeclared minor in post-colonial literature. I can't really remember why it was undeclared. I think I was short a couple of credits or something, but who cares? It was a long time ago. The point is that I've had a very long fascination for colonialism and how it was carried out, its systems, and its enduring effect on our world. And so I read a lot of stuff about it. I have to be a little bit careful, however, because it makes me really mad sometimes, as you will see during this video. I'd also like to point out that this is not a Colonialism 101 class, and I am not designing a college course here, which is not to say that these are not books that you can read if you don't know anything about colonialism. You can, but I'm just saying if you want something that's more of a primer, then these are not the books for you. Okay, I'm going to start with a heavy hitter, which is Mike Davis's Late Victorian Holocausts. It's about climate change, but it is also about colonialism in the 19th century and its after effects since then. Now, when this book came out, it caused quite a sensation, and it is still a book that people talk about and quote extensively when they talk about colonialism and its ill effects. I think he was one of the first to talk about the British colonialism in India as a cultural genocide for reasons that I will discuss in a minute. Obviously, that ruffled a few feathers. What about the trains? This book is really about India, China, and Brazil, mostly. But it is also about Vietnam, Korea, the Philippines, New Caledonia, which is this group of islands off the coast of Australia, if you don't know, and Ethiopia as well. But generally, it is about the processes and the effect of colonialism and its contribution to world famine in conjunction with climate change in the 19th century. If that sounds like a really heavy book to you, that's because, yes, this is an extremely heavy book. It's incredibly upsetting, and for me personally, it's sort of triggering because famine to me is pretty much the worst way that somebody can die. I've never seen somebody die of famine in real life, like I've never seen anyone starve to death, but just the images alone, it's a horrible, long, protracted way to die. And today, when we are in 2020, and I don't know how much you keep up with, current events, but the prospect of millions starving to death is a very real one, and I couldn't stop myself from thinking about this book pretty much for the past 2 months. This book is not hard to read in terms of prose, but it is hard in terms of the information, and so much of it is derived from first-hand sources especially, and it's a real doozy. I always think of what the Germans did under the Nazis as a logical extension of European belief systems at the time, which is not to say that I'm discounting or downplaying the Holocaust. I can't believe I have to say this, but this is where we are in the culture right now, so please don't take any part of this video to mean that I don't think it was like a big deal what the Jews went through during the Second World War. I think the Holocaust as suffered by the Jews was a stain on humanity, and what they had to suffer under various other regimes, European regimes, be it the British, the Spaniards, the French, what have you. It's a scandal and a half, and I don't think enough people reckon with it. What I'm saying is that there are other people who have been targeted and similarly persecuted by the European powers, and we don't talk about those enough, because I think for a lot of people they just found a convenient scapegoat not a scapegoat, but maybe a sin eater in the Germans. And I think that's very convenient for the Europeans. But going back to Davis, I'm going to link down below to Professor Amartya Sen's review of this book when it came out. That's important because Sen won a Nobel Prize for his work regarding famines, and his review is a really wonderful compliment to the book itself. And I'll also link to the first chapter of the book, so you can read and see if that is something that you want to buy. I'm a full-service booktube. My next recommendation is The Empire of Cotton, and that is really more about the Anglo-American industrial period and how it was supported by black labor, specifically slave labor. Now, in 2020, if you don't know the importance of slave labor and indentured labor to capitalism and to the economies of the global north, then I don't know what to say to you. But this particular book, which is more academic than my other recommendations, so I do want to let you know that it is a pretty dense book. It's not a quick weekend read, but it sort of explores these issues solely through cotton. Where was it grown? Why was it so important? What were the different political aspects of the cotton trade? And how did it shape the economies and the lives of people in the West and the East and the global South, and pretty much the entire world? So this book is written by Sven Beckert, who's a historian, and I'm going to link down below to an article that he wrote for The Atlantic, so you can get a sense of his prose as well. And the thing about a good historian is that he can turn dry facts into a good story. If you really look at history, it's sort of like a gossipy memoir of us as a human race. So when you read this book, there's so many things that you've already known, but it also gives you these little tidbits that make you go, wait, I didn't know that. Wait, that guy did what? Oh my God, these two are connected. That's the kind of writing that I really appreciate. Tiny little factoids that I didn't know before that help me make connections that kind of blow my mind. However, it is a more academic book, and it does get a little bogged down in not just telling you the history of the cotton trade, but also how it relates to so many things that are happening today. But it's still an invaluable book to read, I think. My next recommendation is Churchill's Secret War by Madhusree Mukerjee, and the subtitle of this book is The British Empire and the Ravaging of India during the Second World War. So right from the title, this book pulls no punches. I would say that this book is really for people who are interested in Indian history and in the history of the British Empire, as well as Churchill, who is of course a huge hero in the West. But as Mukerjee likes to point out in her book, there wasn't that much of a difference between the beliefs of Hitler and Churchill. I personally think of it as a great resource to understand how a privileged few can play games with the lives of millions and still be hailed as heroes. And that's pretty much our political system. So as the title suggests, this is a deep dive into the actions of Churchill, his actions in India or regarding India during the Second World War, and how he directly caused the Bengal famine of 1943, in which conservatively about 3 million people died. I just want you to take that number and put it in context with all the other things that were happening during the Second World War. The book also makes cases for why Churchill was responsible for the partition of India and the misery that has unfolded from that, and about the communal discord that sort of fuels a lot of the tragedy that occurs on the subcontinent today. But I feel like that is something that you have to take in context. However, if you are interested in Churchill, or if you would like to read a little bit about India during the Second World War, I would strongly suggest you pick up a copy of this book because it is eye-opening. and incredibly harrowing as well. I think this video is going on forever, so I'm just going to wrap things up with my last recommendation for today, which is also the reason why I thought about this theme, because this is one of my all-time favorite books in any genre, and I'm positively evangelical about it, and I want everyone to read it. I'm talking about A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid, which is, I think, classified as creative nonfiction, but is also about colonialism and how it affected Antigua, which is the island in the Caribbean where she was born. And to me, this is also the book that taught me the value of rage. I'd always thought of it as a destructive force, and then I read Kincaid, and it sort of really made me reevaluate the power that rage has to make you re-examine and write effective prose. So a large part of this book is about how colonialism affected Antigua, the casual racism, and by casual racism I mean like outright racism, the corruption after the end of colonialism, the tourism industry, and how it's turned into a brand new kind of racist imperialism. It's just fascinating, and it really gives you a new look at the Caribbean, especially if you love to travel the way I do and you go to new places with different cultures. This book really makes you re-examine your role as a traveler and a tourist, and makes you really think about how you interact with the local populace and the effect of your being there on the local people. But honestly, I just love the prose. I think she just writes with such elegant rage. She pretty much singes off my eyebrows with some paragraphs. I love it. I love her. I recommend all her books, but I especially recommend this as your introduction to Jamaica Kincaid if you've never read her. And it's a pretty short book, so you can just read it in a quick weekend. If you don't read a single book that I have discussed in this episode, I really wish that you would pick up a copy of Jamaica Kincaid's A Small Place. That's how much I love it. For more videos, please hit the subscribe button.